Hello, welcome to Craig's Gun Channel. Today I want to discuss the outright assault we're facing against the Second Amendment. Currently, 47 anti-gun bills are being reviewed by Congress. Two of them, H.R. 8 and 1112, have been approved in the House and have been sent on to the Senate for review. I've already discussed them, but I wanted you to be aware of the overall magnitude of what is going on. All of these bills are designed in one way or another to remove firearms from civilians or prevent us from obtaining them. Two of them, H.R. 717 and 1262, call for increasing the age to buy or possess firearms to age 21. So you may be old enough to vote and serve your country, and perhaps even give your life for it, but you're not allowed to have the same constitutional rights as everyone else? So to make it fair, do you have to maybe not pay taxes or maybe not be able to be drafted until age 21? No, I don't think so. And for those who say that other things such as buying alcohol are restricted by age, I would point out that alcohol consumption is not a constitutionally protected right, whereas firearms ownership is. 10 of the bills, H.R. 511, 569, 744, 971, 1116, 1236, 1287, and Senate Bills 7, 120, and 506, are all some permutation of a red flag law. These laws are intended to keep guns away from people who may be a danger to self or others. While that sounds reasonable on the outside, the real problem is that they restrict a constitutional right without due process. Ultimately, it allows for the state to determine who is fit to exercise their rights. It's the start of a slippery slope, punishing those people before they actually do anything based on what could happen. And also keep in mind, to the anti-gun establishment, just wanting to own a firearm is almost proof that something's wrong with you to begin with. Four of the bills, H.R. 8, 167, 820, and Senate Bill 42, seek to restrict ownership or limit property rights by requiring background checks where they're not now required, such as private sales or gun shows, or by adding additional requirements to the background check process itself as dictated by H.R. 49, 821, and 1112. H.R. 33 calls for tougher laws on gun trafficking straw purchases, which are already illegal. Not that it applies to those in power. Remember, the BATF, under executive directive, broke that law themselves in the Fast and Furious operation, which ultimately resulted in the death of a Border Patrol agent in 2010. H.R. 659 and 1279 seek to fund gun buyback programs, which consistently have shown to do nothing to deter crime and in fact may contribute to firearm thefts. I guess it's a good thing when the government becomes the fencing agent for criminals, right? H.R. 1115 would place firearms under the provision of the Consumer Safety Administration, which would just allow for another layer of anti-gun bureaucrats who generally know nothing about firearms to be able to enact regulations on them, and lest we forget, by definition, all firearms are inherently dangerous. H.R. 1266 and Senate Bill 459 seeks to reclassify gun parts kits as firearms themselves. This fear of the ghost gun is ridiculous. Generally speaking, anyone who has the technical ability to fully assemble a firearm from one of these kits generally already possesses the knowledge, skills, and equipment to make one from the ground up. Firearms are a hobby for these people, and a firearms parts kit is like a model kit or restoring a car. Criminals generally don't work that hard. They just steal or otherwise acquire the finished item. Also, parts kits are frequently used as an economical way to obtain parts to maintain firearms you already have. Four bills, H.R. 435, 674, 743, and Senate Bill 184, call for creation and/or funding for gun violence research studies. Again, this sounds all well and good. However, a prohibition was put onto this type of funding in the past, as time and again these groups would use the funding to work on the creation of firearms registration schemes, which is currently not permissible under law, or they outright support anti-gun agendas. Not to worry though, as one of the bills, H.R. 687, calls for registration of handguns anyway, and a few others include registration of various types as part of inclusion of semi-automatic firearms into the NFA process, such as H.R. 1263. 9 bills seek to drive up the cost of gun ownership, such as H.R. 157, which would allow for civil suits to be brought against firearm manufacturers for the crimes or injuries committed not by the manufacturer, but by the person holding the gun. Litigation such as this would drive up the cost of firearms at the least, or completely cause some companies to just go away. H.R. 719, 869, 930, and 942 calls for the inclusion of smart gun technologies, firearm passive identification requirements, or microstamping of spent ammunition cases to allow for criminal investigation. This all sounds good, but the technology is not really there yet, and all it would do is drive up costs to law-abiding citizens. And as criminals will work around these limits anyway, they will in reality do little to limit criminal activity. H.R. 939 and Senate Bills 193 and 320 would mandate specified storage requirements for firearms for both citizens and licensed dealers. And H.R. 822 would require proof of having an as-yet undefined liability insurance policy before you would be allowed to purchase a firearm. Again, requiring people to purchase a product, in this case insurance, to exercise a right. And before everyone shouts out that you have to have liability coverage before you get a driver's license, let me again point out, there is a Second Amendment constitutionally protected right to firearms. There is no such right to operate a motor vehicle. That is a privilege, not a right. Three bills, H.R. 686, 952, and 1297, all seek to make it more difficult to obtain ammunition. H.R. 686 forbids online or catalog purchases of ammunition and requires reporting of anyone who buys more than 1,000 rounds over any 5-day period. Again, this is legislation created by anti-gun politicians who have no understanding of those that enjoy our Second Amendment freedoms. It is not unusual at all to purchase ammunition in lots of 1,000 rounds or more, as it's more cost-effective. Anyone who shoots knows how much ammunition you can go through. It's not unusual when I go shooting to go through several hundred rounds at one time. This bill also has language in it that speaks to armor-piercing ammunition and seeks to limit that. The reality is, all rifle ammunition is able to penetrate armor, and many rounds, especially military surplus, which, being surplus, is oftentimes a more affordable option, have this ability. H.R. 952 seeks to create a review process to determine what is armor-piercing based on whether a sporting purpose exists for the ammunition. Historically, target and recreational shooting is not always considered a sporting purpose. H.R. 1297 seeks to add any firearm that has the ability to be concealed and utilize armor-piercing ammunition to be added to the NFA process, which would require background checks, taxes, and registration of them, among other limits. This would mean any pistol that fires any rifle round, including .223 or .762, or the 5.7 by 28 round, would be subject. And finally, H.R. 1186 and Senate Bill 447 mandate maximum magazine capacities of 10 rounds, and then of course there's H.R. 282 and Senate Bill 66, which calls for the resurrection of the assault weapons ban of 1994. It calls for the banning of all firearms classified as assault weapons, which is defined as essentially all semi-automatic firearms with either a greater than 10 round fixed magazine or any detachable magazine that have any one of the following evil features: a threaded barrel, a pistol grip, and this time that would include thumbhole stocks, forward grip, folding, telescoping, or detachable stock, grenade launcher, rocket launcher, or a barrel shroud. Also included would be any device or mechanism that allows for increased rates of fire, such as a bump stock or a binary type trigger. It would also include any semi-auto version of any full auto firearm. Semi-auto shotguns that have capacity to accept more than 5 rounds in an internal magazine or any detachable magazine are also included. It then lists out by name or series close to 200 firearms, including of course the AR and AK series, the HKs, and even the SKS if they can have a detachable magazine, which they practically can all have a detachable magazine. There's even several firearms that were specifically created to comply with the original ban, such as the Beretta Storm and the High Point carbine. Those are also now included in the ban. All magazines over 10 round capacity would be banned, and this bill would require that all firearm transfers be done via a licensed dealer. Existing firearms would be allowed to be kept, however, all future transfers would have to be done via a licensed dealer with background check requirements. Now is the time to contact your representatives in the House and Senate and state your opposition to these bills. While those on the left will call all of this common sense gun regulation, it is not. It is legislation that is designed to strip away Second Amendment rights from law-abiding citizens. And for those of you who will now point out that just because it's a right does not mean it cannot be regulated, generally citing the whole First Amendment freedom of speech does not allow you to yell fire in a theater, I just want to point out what should be obvious. When someone yells fire in a theater, they're not arrested for exercising their constitutional rights. They are arrested for inciting panic. That is the same as the Second Amendment, in that I am constitutionally allowed to own a firearm, but I'm not allowed to shoot someone with it. Common sense gun laws would be those that punish the criminal. Last I checked, criminals are already breaking the law, but if you want to throw some common sense at it, then mandate minimum sentence requirements for criminals who use firearms in the process of committing crimes. That, to me, is common sense. In the description below the video, I've listed all of the bills I mentioned today, and have also listed the website where you can access the full text of them. I have also listed the 2 web addresses where you can look up the contact information for your congressman, both in the Senate and the House. I hope this information is of value to you, and I want to thank you for joining me today. And please subscribe to make sure you don't miss anything. And as always, until next week, stay safe.